My name is Maria Quinn, 34 years old. The hum of the cardiac monitor had become part of our lives, a background rhythm that dictated when I could breathe and when I couldn't. My son, Oliver, had been fighting for his heartbeat since the day he was born. At 6 years old, he'd already survived one open-heart surgery. The doctors called it tetralogy of Fallot, 4 defects in the construction of his tiny heart that made every beat a fragile miracle. The surgery had saved him once, but Dr. Morrison, his cardiologist, warned us it wouldn't be the last. He's stable, she'd said, but his heart rhythm is unpredictable. Any cardiac event could be life-threatening. If he ever shows chest pain, shortness of breath, or irregular beats, bring him in immediately. I'd memorized her words like scripture. Maxwell, my husband, called me obsessive. Maybe I was. I kept Oliver's medications lined up by color and dosage, labeled in bold. His teachers and the school nurse had a laminated card with his emergency protocol. I slept light, trained to wake at every shift in his breathing. For a year and a half, things were quiet. Oliver went back to school, laughed again, played gentle soccer under the watch of his therapist. I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, we could live like other families. Then, 2 months ago, it all came crashing back. He woke one night clutching his chest, pale and trembling. His pulse jumped like a trapped bird under my fingers. We rushed him to Cedar Grove Medical Center, and Dr. Morrison admitted him immediately. His rhythm's unstable, she said. We'll keep him on continuous cardiac monitoring until we find the cause. That meant wires, sensors, screens, his small body tethered to machines that guarded him from death. If anything went wrong, an alarm would scream through the nurse's station. The system was foolproof, Dr. Morrison assured me. I believed her, until Bridget walked in. Bridget, Maxwell's younger sister, had always been a storm disguised as sunlight. She sold pharmaceuticals for a living, the kind of person who wore confidence like perfume and reminded everyone of her 6-figure income. I was a high school art teacher, which, in her world, meant I was a charity case who happened to marry up. She'd never liked me. At our wedding, she wore white. When I got pregnant, she told Maxwell's mother, "Well, I guess Maria trapped him the old-fashioned way." And when Oliver was diagnosed, she'd said, "Genetic defects usually come from the mother's side." I still remember the silence that followed. Maxwell didn't defend me, not really. He just muttered, "She doesn't mean it that way. She's just blunt." Blunt. That was his favorite word for her cruelty. So when Bridget showed up at the hospital with a teddy bear and crocodile tears, I should have known something was coming. "Oh, poor Oliver," she cooed, smoothing his hair. "Aunt Bridget's here to take care of you." At first, I bit my tongue. She was family. Diane and Thomas, my in-laws, would have crucified me if I'd caused a scene. "She means well," Diane always said. "She just struggles with emotions." But Bridget's kindness had an expiration date. By the second day, she was correcting me in front of nurses. When I reminded one about Oliver's medication schedule, Bridget cut in. "Actually, Maria tends to overreact. You should double-check everything with Dr. Morrison." I turned sharply. "Excuse me?" She smiled like butter wouldn't melt. "You just get so anxious. I'm only helping." Later that night, I told Maxwell what she said. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "She's just trying to help in her own way, Maria. Don't turn this into something it's not. She's undermining me in front of the staff." "She loves Oliver." "No," I said. "She loves being right." But Maxwell was exhausted. 6 nights sleeping in a hospital chair will make anyone a diplomat. I dropped it, but I didn't forget. A few days later, Bridget started bringing Oliver candy. Bright, sugary contraband that could send his heart rate spiking. When I tried to stop her, she rolled her eyes. "A little sugar won't kill him." "His doctor said no sugar." "You're being ridiculous." "I'm following medical advice." "And you're smothering him. No wonder he's so anxious." Her tone was sharp enough that Oliver looked down, ashamed, as if he'd done something wrong by wanting candy. I snatched it from her hands and threw it away. That night, she complained to Maxwell again. He came to me, his patience threadbare. "Please don't start drama. She's only visiting for an hour a day." "Drama? She's questioning doctors, bringing junk food, talking to nurses behind my back." He rubbed his forehead. "Maria, not everything is a conspiracy. Bridget's family, she cares. But caring doesn't look like sabotage." And then came Sharon, a nurse who had been with us since Oliver's admission. One evening, she approached me quietly at the nurse's station. "Mrs. Quinn," she said, "your sister-in-law's been asking some strange questions." My pulse quickened. "What kind of questions?" About the monitors, how they connect to our system. What happens if they're turned off? I blinked. Why would she? I don't know, Sharon admitted. It made me uncomfortable. I thought you should know. I thanked her, forcing a polite smile, but my stomach turned to stone. That night, I told Maxwell. He didn't even look up from his phone. She's in medical sales, Maria. She's just curious about equipment. She asked what happens if the alarm is turned off. He looked at me then, pitying. You're seeing ghosts because you're tired. Maybe I was. But when I looked at Bridget the next morning, her hair perfect, her perfume faintly sweet, something inside me recoiled. Later that afternoon, I caught her near the monitor, tracing the wires with her manicured nails. What's that button for? She asked Sharon casually. Sharon answered, professional but curt. It controls the connection to our station. If you hold it for 3 seconds, it silences the external alarm temporarily. Only staff are authorized to use it. Bridget smiled. Interesting. So if it's off, you wouldn't know if something was wrong right away. Sharon frowned. It's never supposed to be off. Bridget's smile didn't reach her eyes. That night, when I was packing up Oliver's things for the next day, I almost said it. I don't want her in the room again. The words hovered in my throat like smoke. But Maxwell was finally asleep, and Oliver looked peaceful, his small hand clutching the teddy bear Bridget had brought. So I said nothing. And as I turned off the bedside lamp, the soft glow of the monitor filled the room, a steady green pulse, strong and sure. I told myself it meant safety. I told myself the system would protect him. I was wrong. The night it happened, the hospital felt like a ship at sea, floors humming, vents sighing, the monitors soft beeps like buoys in fog. Maxwell had finally gone home to shower and grab fresh clothes after 6 days of chair sleep and vending machine coffee. My mother, Linda, took the visitor's chair with a paperback and a determination that made her look 10 years younger. Go downstairs and eat something real, she said, touching my cheek as if I were the patient. I'll sit right here and watch his numbers dance. Oliver was propped against pillows watching cartoons, the green line in its usual stubborn climb and fall. Back in 20, I promised, and kissed his warm forehead. The cafeteria was a country of fluorescent lights and plastic trays. I chose soup I barely tasted, a roll I tore into confetti, and water because the coffee tasted like old pennies. The whole time, I kept seeing Oliver's chest rise and fall, small and faithful, the way I used to watch him sleep as a baby. When the elevator dinged on my floor, I felt steadier. Then I turned the corner and saw Bridget. She had perfect timing, like a pop song you can't get out of your head. Oh, Linda, she sang, leaning in the doorway with a paper gift bag. I didn't realize you were here tonight. My mother smiled, polite. Maria needed a break. He's been stable. Look at that. 68, 70, back to 68. I swear this machine has a sense of humor. She winced, rubbing her knee. Would you mind grabbing me a coffee from the machine down the hall? I'll pay you back. I don't want to leave him alone. Of course, Bridget said quickly, too quickly. Aunt Bridget will stand guard. She touched Oliver's hair like a benediction. I'll be right here, champ. Thanks, my mother said, pressing a hand to Oliver's blanket. Back in a minute. Security footage would later timestamp it to the second. Linda left at 6:18 p.m. The corridor camera caught her short, careful steps, the way she paused to read the coffee machine's instructions. Inside the room, Bridget sat, then stood, then smoothed the blanket that didn't need smoothing. She watched the screen like it was a rival. At 6:22, she leaned behind the bed. There's a small gap between the headboard and the wall, just enough to slip a hand through. The monitor sat on its curved arm. Its cords, bundled neatly, ran to a connection point that routed the alarm to the nurse's station. If the heart rhythm went wild, the station alarm would scream. If the oxygen dropped, the station alarm would scream. If anything slipped toward disaster, the station alarm would scream and help would run, unless the relay was silenced. The system requires a deliberate press and hold, 3 seconds, not a brush or a bump or a clumsy elbow. You must intend it. At 6:23 p.m., the log would show exactly that command. In the room, only the glow changed, some nuance the eye might miss unless it had learned to live by light. Bridget's shoulders relaxed. She sat again, said something to Oliver none of us could hear on the grainy camera, and checked her lipstick in her phone screen. At 6:36, she left, smile back in place, bag swinging. My mother returned at 6:37 with coffee she never drank. She took her chair, opened her paperback, and watched the numbers like a grandmother learning a second language. The monitor in the room did not complain because it did not know it had been gagged. I came back at 6:47, carrying a paper bag that smelled of broth and salt. Oliver had tucked the teddy bear under his arm. Cartoons whispered about a dragon afraid of its own fire. "How's my brave knight?" I asked. "Sleepy," he murmured. My mother stood, stretching. "I'll let you two settle. Call me if you need me." She kissed my hair and left. The minutes thinned. The light at the window went bruised violet, the color of a healing sky. I unwrapped the soup and stared at it. On the screen, the green line moved. I counted without meaning to. 68, 70, 65. Oliver's chest fluttered, small, fast, like a bird beating at glass. "Buddy?" I set the soup aside and leaned close. His eyelashes trembled, then stilled. His breathing was too shallow, the way air sounds when it won't commit. I looked at the numbers again. 65, 60, 58. The line was steady, but the slope of the beats began to lengthen. "Oliver." I touched his cheek. It was damp, not with fever, with effort. He didn't answer. I stood so fast the chair shrieked across the floor. "Nurse!" I shouted into the corridor, voice cracking. "Nurse, please!" Sharon was there first, as if she'd been running toward us in a dream and finally reached the door. She took one look at the tracing and swore under her breath. "Code blue," she said into the hall. "Room 317, code blue." She hit the local alarm, the one that makes the ceiling lights strobe, and the corridor erupted. Feet, voices, the rattle of the crash cart, a tech hauling oxygen like a fisherman hauling net. "Baby, breathe, breathe," I whispered, because there are no prayers left when a monitor hears your thoughts and draws them in green. 50, 42. The numbers were stepping off a cliff in twos. A resident slid past me, already gloved. The defibrillator machine thumped against the bed frame. "What's his baseline, Soma?" "Line," someone asked. "What's the dose weight?" "Where's Dr. Morrison?" "On her way." Sharon glanced at the wall. "Why didn't the station alarm?" She froze. "The relay's not lit." Her fingers flew. "Who silenced?" 38, the resident snapped. "We're losing it." I felt my own heart go arrhythmic in my chest. A sick sympathy. "What does that mean?" I asked. But the room had no room for me. A nurse's arm barred my advance with gentle steel. Another guided me backward until my legs found the chair. The defibrillator pads peeled and slapped. A syringe appeared. Someone counted compressions under breath like a spell. 29. The line took a breath like a shrug. Dr. Morrison swept in, eyes assessing everything at once. "What happened to the relay?" she asked without looking. "Why didn't we get an alert?" "Disconnected," Sharon said grimly. "The station didn't receive." "Reconnect it now," Dr. Morrison ordered, voice cold as a blade. To the team, "Epinephrine ready. On my mark, go." I watched the line go thin, then flatter, then nothing. That long, terrible tone isn't really a tone. It's a straight line you hear. The body makes a sound of not sound, and the world inverts. I screamed. The nurse holding me tightened her grip. "We've got him," she said. "We're working." Time became bright beads on a string I couldn't see. Dr. Morrison's commands were the only points of light. "Charge. Clear. Again. Wait. There. Okay. Hold compressions. Good. Again." A tech called numbers I could not anchor to meaning. Sharon murmured a prayer, or maybe it was a drug dose. Then, like a coin dropping into a jar, a beat. Another. A stuttering, angry rhythm found us. The tone broke. The green line remembered how to climb and fall. The room exhaled as a unit. "We're moving him to cardiac ICU," Dr. Morrison said. Her eyes found mine, softer now. "He's back. It was close, but he's back. We need tighter monitoring." "Why didn't anyone come?" My voice was raw, a rope burn. "Why didn't the station alarm go off?" Sharon looked sick. "Because the relay was disconnected. It was functioning when we checked half an hour ago." "Disconnected by who?" I asked, and the room was suddenly too quiet. "Who would—" "We'll find out," Dr. Morrison said. "There are system logs and security cameras. Right now, we focus on Oliver." I followed them into the corridor as they wheeled my son away, his cheek pale against the pillow, the teddy bear trapped by the straps across his lap. The ICU doors swallowed him, and then it was me and the white hallway and the roar of blood in my ears. Maxwell arrived breathless, hair damp, eyes blown wide. He took in the lights, the scattered wrappers on the floor, the abandoned soup. "What happened?" he asked, grabbing my shoulders. "The alarm didn't reach the nurses," I said. The relay was off. He flatlined. The word caught. They brought him back. Maxwell closed his eyes, forehead touching mine. We were two trees in a storm. Roots knotted, unsure which way to lean. "How?" he asked after a moment. "How was it off?" "There are logs," I said. "Cameras. They'll know." A memory slid cold through my stomach. Bridget's voice, curious, mild. "So if it's off, you wouldn't know if something was wrong right away." I saw the tilt of her head, the way her eyes sharpened when Sharon said press and hold for 3 seconds. Sharon approached, contrite, resolute. "We'll work with security," she said. "The system records every command. Disconnection is not accidental. It requires intent." She looked at me, as if bracing for impact. "We'll find out who did it." Maxwell flinched, almost imperceptibly, and then smoothed his face the way people smooth a bed they don't intend to sleep in. "Maybe it was a malfunction," he offered weakly. "Sharon says it wasn't." My voice surprised me. Flat, clean, like a scalpel. It was a press and hold. Someone decided to turn it off. The corridor emptied by degrees, the emergency energy evaporating, leaving disinfectant and a dropped glove like a shed skin. In the ICU, Oliver would be under a different set of lights, watched by monitors that reported to more places than one. In this hallway, only the wall clock spoke, 7:19, 7:20, 7:21, as if time could insist on normal. My phone buzzed on the chair, a text from Natasha. "I'm on my way. Who was alone with him tonight?" I typed nothing. I didn't need to. The answer sat inside my chest, cold and precise as a key turning in a lock. The hospital security footage didn't lie. At 6:15 p.m., Bridget entered Oliver's room. At 6:18, my mother left for coffee. At 6:22, Bridget stood up, her body angled deliberately to block the camera's view, and reached behind the bed. At 6:23, the system log confirmed it. The alarm relay was manually disconnected. By 6:36, Bridget left the room. My mother returned 1 minute later. When Detective Carson played the footage back in slow motion, the room was silent, except for the hum of the monitor in the background. Watching her, calm, methodical, hand moving behind my son's bed like she was brushing lint from a pillow, made bile rise in my throat. "She said it was an accident," Carson muttered, "but this button requires a 3-second hold. You have to mean it." Maxwell stared at the screen, unblinking. Maybe she didn't know what she was pressing. Carson's eyes flicked toward him. "Sir, the sequence is on a recessed control panel. You'd have to lift the cover and press down. That's not casual." I whispered. She wanted to prove me wrong. Carson didn't answer. He didn't need to. They brought Bridget in for questioning that afternoon. She arrived in her usual armor, hair sleek, perfume crisp, voice steady. "I didn't touch anything," she said, crossing her legs. "I'm not a nurse. I wouldn't dare interfere with hospital equipment." The detective let the silence stretch before pressing play. The grainy footage filled the screen. Bridget, alone, reaching behind the bed. The faint sound of the monitor beeping filled the room like a heartbeat mocking her. Her face tightened just for a second. Then, I was adjusting his pillow. The wires were tangled. I didn't disconnect anything. Carson leaned forward. The pillow's on the other side of the bed. Bridget's lips parted, but no sound came out. The next excuse was worse. Maybe I bumped it with my elbow. I didn't realize. He cut her off. "Ma'am, it's a protected button. You can't bump it. You have to press and hold." Her expression flickered again, something wild behind her eyes. Then she folded her arms. "Fine. Maybe I pressed it. But it wasn't intentional. I didn't think it would matter." When she left the interrogation room, her confidence cracked like cheap porcelain. 2 days later, detectives subpoenaed her phone records. That was when the last illusion of misunderstanding died. Searches from her browser history. How do cardiac monitors work? Can you disable hospital alarms? What happens when heart monitor alarm is off? How long can a child survive cardiac event without treatment? There were text messages too, dozens of them, to a coworker named Megan. Bridget. Selena acts like she's the only one who cares about Oliver. Bridget. She's obsessed with control. Everyone's afraid to tell her she's neurotic. Bridget. Someone needs to show her what happens when she's not in charge. My hands shook as I scrolled through the screenshots Detective Carson handed me. The words blurred. I kept thinking, she researched it. She planned it. Maxwell sat beside me, staring straight ahead. She didn't mean to hurt him, he murmured, voice hollow. She's just unstable. She disconnected a hospital alarm, I said quietly. That's not unstable. That's evil. He looked up then, eyes rimmed red. She's my sister. And he's your son, I snapped. Pick a side. The silence that followed was the kind you don't recover from easily. By the time Bridget's lawyer arrived, the story had changed again. She now admitted to turning off the alarm, but claimed it was a bad judgment call. She just wanted to prove that hospital staff shouldn't rely entirely on machines, the lawyer said. A misguided lesson, not a malicious act. Dr. Morrison was in the room when he said it. Her normally calm face turned fierce. Do you understand that she nearly killed a child, she said. He flatlined. He stopped breathing. We lost precious minutes because of what she did. The lawyer opened his mouth, but Morrison kept going. If his mother hadn't noticed, Oliver would be dead. I don't care what narrative you spin. That's not a mistake. That's intent. After that, everything blurred into paperwork, interviews, and endless retellings of the same nightmare. Ashley, my sister, came with me to the police station the next morning. She was calm in the way only lawyers can be. Sharp, deliberate, merciless. This wasn't an accident, she told Detective Carson. She's been undermining my sister for years. You'll find motive in her jealousy. And they did. The prosecutors called it reckless endangerment of a child and interference with medical equipment. But privately, one investigator told me it was closer to attempted manslaughter. Bridget's confession, if you could call it that, was maddening. I didn't mean to hurt him, she said. I just wanted Selena to see that her anxiety wasn't necessary, that she can't control everything. You risked a child's life to teach a lesson? Carson asked. Bridget hesitated. I thought the nurses would check on him anyway. Her delusion was breathtaking. She wanted Oliver to have a small scare, to prove I wasn't the only one capable of keeping him safe. But when his heart actually failed, she'd been gone long enough that the silence almost became a death sentence. When Maxwell read the report, he went pale. She wanted to humiliate you, he whispered. She wanted to prove you were wrong. She almost killed him to do it? He pressed his hands to his face. God, I kept defending her. All these years I thought she was just socially off. I didn't see it. No, I said bitterly. You didn't want to see it. The next week was a storm of fallout. The hospital announced it would press charges and overhaul its safety systems. Diane and Thomas came to see us, clinging to hope like it could change the facts. She made a mistake, Diane said through tears. She didn't understand how serious it was. I met her eyes. She researched how to disable alarms. Thomas tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. She didn't mean for him to get hurt, he insisted weakly. She knew he could, I said. She gambled with his life. Even Maxwell couldn't argue now. The day Bridget was arrested, Oliver was home from the ICU, pale but stable. He sat on the couch, building a Lego tower, unaware of the headlines his aunt was making. The police arrived quietly, no handcuffs until she was outside, but she still managed to toss her hair and smile for the cameras. The charges were read aloud. Reckless endangerment of a child, interference with medical equipment, attempted manslaughter. I watched from the window as she was placed in the back of the squad car, her reflection briefly aligning with mine in the glass. For a second, I didn't see the monster who'd risked my son's life. I saw the woman who'd once handed me champagne at my wedding, who'd smiled at Oliver in the hospital. The cruel irony of family. You share blood with the people who can wound you deepest. Maxwell stood beside me, eyes fixed on the flashing lights. She's my sister, he whispered again, but this time there was no defense in his tone, just grief. I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. She's not anymore, I said softly. Not after this. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Oliver's room, watching the soft green pulse of his monitor, the safe hum of connection restored. Every few seconds, the machine chirped gently, a heartbeat, a promise, a warning. I thought of Bridget's words to the police, her absurd justification. I didn't think anything serious would happen. The arrogance of that sentence burned. The prosecutor called me the next morning. We'll move quickly, she said. The evidence is airtight. But I need your statement, Mrs. Quinn. We need to show the jury the human cost. I agreed. When I hung up, Maxwell was standing in the doorway holding a folded letter. His voice broke as he said, I wrote something to her now. I don't know if I should send it. What does it say? That she's dead to me. For once, I didn't have to tell him what was right. He already knew. The trial took 6 months to reach. 6 months of subpoenas, testimony, and public outrage. 6 months of living with the echo of that flatline ringing somewhere inside me. When it began, I sat at the prosecution's table, hands locked together in my lap. Bridget walked in wearing a beige suit and that same corporate calm she'd weaponized for years. To anyone else, she looked composed, like a woman attending a conference, not one accused of nearly killing her nephew. Dr. Morrison testified first. Her words were clinical, deliberate, but they cut like glass. "Every second matters in a cardiac event," she said, pointing to a monitor diagram displayed on a screen. "Children with Oliver's condition can suffer catastrophic damage in under 3 minutes without immediate intervention. Disconnecting that alarm removed the hospital's first line of defense. This was not an accident. This was deliberate." The defense tried to make her sound hysterical, a grieving mother projecting malice onto a misunderstanding. But when they played Bridget's Google search history and the text messages, the courtroom shifted. There's something cold about seeing intent written out in black and white. Someone needs to show her what happens when she's not in control. Maybe then she'll finally shut up about Oliver's heart. The air thickened. Even the jurors looked away. Then came the part none of us expected. The prosecution introduced a final piece of evidence, a recovered voice memo Bridget had recorded but never sent, found in her phone's deleted files. Her voice was light, casual, almost amused. "She thinks she's the only one keeping that kid alive. Wait until she realizes the world doesn't stop when she lets go. Maybe then she'll finally breathe." You could have heard a pin drop. Maxwell's face drained of color. Diane sobbed openly. Even Bridget seemed stunned, as if hearing her own cruelty from the outside for the first time. When it was my turn to speak, I stood at the witness stand, palms sweating. "She didn't just turn off an alarm," I said. "She turned off the one thing standing between my son and death. She thought she was teaching me a lesson about control, but the only lesson she taught me is that love can be used as a weapon." Bridget looked at me then, not with remorse, not with anger, but with something like disbelief, as if she'd never expected me to survive her lesson. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the foreman didn't even look at her. "Guilty on all counts." The judge's voice carried the kind of finality that makes the room smaller. "You used your knowledge of medical systems to endanger a vulnerable child. You researched it, you planned it, you lied about it. That is not a mistake. That is calculation." 8 years in prison, minimum 6 before parole, restitution for Oliver's medical costs, and therapy. Revocation of her medical sales license. When the gavel fell, Diane's sobs broke into the echo of it. Maxwell sat frozen, one tear sliding down his cheek. Afterward, he sent the letter. "Bridget, you almost killed my son because you were jealous of my wife. There's no apology that can change that. When you walk out of that courtroom, understand this. You're no longer my sister. You're a stranger who shares my DNA. Don't contact me. Don't contact Maria. When you get out, stay away from my family." Maxwell. He didn't wait for her reply. Life after the verdict was quiet in the way trauma sometimes is. Oliver came home, fragile but smiling. He'd been cleared for light activity, and every laugh felt like a defibrillator to my own heart, shocking me back to life. He built Lego castles again, painted rockets, dreamed of space. But nights were harder. He'd wake crying from dreams he couldn't explain. "Mom," he'd whisper, "promise the machine won't stop again?" "I promise," I'd say, sitting beside his bed, hand on the monitor cord. "I'll make sure it never does." He's in therapy now. His counselor says children heal faster than adults, that their hearts bend instead of breaking. I hope she's right. As for Maxwell and me, healing meant dismantling everything we used to be. The guilt nearly destroyed him. One night, he said quietly, "I defended her every time. I saw what I wanted to see because the truth was too ugly." "It wasn't your fault," I said, though part of me didn't believe it. "She fooled all of us." He shook his head. "No, she didn't fool you. You just loved me enough to stay quiet." We both cried that night, not for Bridget, but for the years we'd lost protecting the wrong person. Diane and Thomas came to see Oliver months later. They stood awkwardly at the door, older than I remembered, both holding flowers that felt like apologies. "May we come in?" Thomas asked. "For a little while," I said. They watched Oliver play, wordless. Diane's hands trembled as she handed him a small wooden puzzle. "Your aunt used to love these," she whispered. I didn't answer. There are apologies that never reach their destination. The hospital changed too. New systems, stricter policies. Sharon stopped by one afternoon and told me, every alarm disconnection is now logged automatically. No one can silence a monitor without staff authorization. Oliver's case is being used to train every new nurse. I nodded. At least something good came from it. It did, she said softly. Your son's story will save others. I wanted to believe that. Bridget sends letters from prison every few months. I don't open them. I can tell from the handwriting that she still doesn't understand what she did. Her first parole hearing will be in 5 years. Maxwell and I have already filed statements opposing her release. So has Dr. Morrison. So has the hospital. Sometimes at night, I imagine what I'll say when that day comes. I forgive you isn't part of it. Forgiveness is for accidents, for ignorance, for people who didn't know better. She knew. She wanted to prove I wasn't as indispensable as I believed. She just didn't expect to be proven wrong this way. Oliver is 9 now. He's learning piano. He likes to end every practice by pressing the sustain pedal and letting the final note ring until it fades. The sound reminds me of the monitor, that long, steady tone that once meant death, now transformed into music. Some nights, when I stand in the doorway and watch him play, I feel something close to peace. Not forgiveness, but peace. And maybe that's enough.